So for those who are not so familiar with the Velmu program, I can tell that we have made in the first part of Velmu, which ended in 2017, an inventory of the whole Finnish Sea area, about 140,000 observations on the underwater species and habitats. And yeah, you can ask, how was this possible? Well, the first thing is, of course, to get enough funding for the work, and that is not obvious that can be received for inventory work in the present days. But we have managed to get major funding from the Finnish Ministry of the Environment, and there have been also other fundings from EU and other projects. Next thing, of course, is to design a cost-effective sampling plan, and originally we had a rather modest sampling plan with 17,000 observation points designed in the whole gradient of different environmental parameters. Then, of course, it's important to share the workload, and there have been a lot of people working on Velmu, especially, of course, Parks and Wildlife Finland, who has done most of the field work, but many other parties have taken part. Then the methods, I won't go into detail. They are very much the same as in SeaMBOT, necessary to use all methods that give enough information of the parameters and species that you want to know about. Then a very important point, don't underestimate the work required by data management. That often is one of the most tedious parts of such an inventory work, to get everything running smoothly and the data harmonized and so forth. And what cannot be emphasized also is that a very important part of the work is to keep up the good spirits. And I know from my personal experience that one of the best people keeping up such good spirits is Metsähallitus Essi Keskinen, and I'm sure that has contributed to the success of SeaMBOT as well. And finally, the data is ready to be used for various purposes, and we can now list a couple of things that has been achieved by Velmu. Of course, a lot of new knowledge on biodiversity hotspots and rare species all around the Finnish Sea area have been recorded. Actually, many of the species that have been thought to be quite rare have been noticed that exist in many places that were not known before, and that has apparently happened also during SeaMBOT, which is good. Some basic knowledge regarding the distribution limits of marine species have been achieved, and of course same for the freshwater species like water mosses. Information of various non-indigenous species, even though we are not a monitoring program but an inventory program, there has been a possibility to see how different non-indigenous species have been spreading in the sea area. A couple of new species for Finland and for science have been recorded, and then the results have been used in various types of spatial planning, red lists, and expansion of Natura 2000 areas. What I'm especially proud of As a result is the first value map of the Finnish underwater marine environment made with zonation program that Elina Virtanen is going to explain a little bit more in the afternoon. Was published in Frontiers in Marine Science in 2018 and has been used ever since for various purposes and is being updated as we speak. Main conclusions from this zonation analysis were that the present marine protected areas cover only about 1/3 of the biodiversity hotspots identified by zonation. Secondly, the hotspots were in such a scattered and small-scale areas that the conclusion was that if we choose wisely the next 1% to protect, the protection efficiency could be doubled from this 27%, which is quite amazing. And I'm sure this type of results will also become obvious in your analysis once they are ready. Another conclusion is that a large part of the biodiversity hotspots are on privately owned waters, which means cities, communes, and individual landowners. If we look at the map of state-owned sea areas in Finnish scale or focus into a smaller area like here in the Archipelago Sea, we can ask where are the highest nature values according to zonation. And this is a preliminary map done for the area, not the final map, but it looks like this. The red areas are the hotspots of different underwater nature values, and you can see that they don't match really good. The state-owned sea areas are mostly in the open sea and in some restricted areas inside the archipelago, but most of the sea area is actually owned by cities and communalities and individual landowners. The same for other sea areas, for instance, the Quark. Red areas again, mostly in the inland or the archipelago and bay areas, and the open sea areas not that valuable according to this analysis. Another application of zonation is the usage of the nature data in allocation of human activities, such as the windmill parks. This is ongoing work, and I really hope that you won't tweet this map because it is in preparation by Elina Virtanen and colleagues. But it is a very interesting analysis where the economical factors affecting the profitability of wind power and human interests, such as visibility to cottages, summer cottages, and all the Velmu nature values have been taken into account. Note that in the southern Finland there are not too much red color, and that is mostly due to the interests of the military. If they would be taken out of the map, then there would be much more red color in the southern Finland as well. All these results have been commended, for instance, by the former Ministry of the Environment, Kimmo Tiilikainen, in the WWF Biodiversity Seminar in the end of 2018. Also, the present Prime Minister Antti Rinne was bursting of excitement, as you can see from his expression, well, seriously speaking, he was very much in line with the Minister Tiilikainen here. So what next? From 2018, we have called our program Velmu 2, and now we don't need to do the same inventory anymore. We want to collect the new information on data deficient species and habitats, and also analyze the data what we have to different spatial data products and analysis. Also, we can allocate time and work power to different campaigns which are locally oriented, like so-called Meriluonto 2020 campaign that I'm going to explain. And here, one of the approaches that we have is to identify valuable areas at 3 spatial scales. These are the large Baltic Sea scale, then national scale, and more local scale. And the first one was taken into effect when we were doing the Convention on Biological Diversity, EBSAs, ecologically or biologically significant marine areas for the Baltic Sea. There were 9 EBSAs, as you can see here in the small picture. For Finland, we got proposed 4 EBSAs, and the 3 first ones were jointly proposed to CBD with Sweden and 1 with Russia. But as you can see, this scale that is relevant in global or Baltic Sea scale is not relevant for national spatial planning, and we asked ourselves, what if we would use the Velmu data and CBD EBSA criteria at a spatial scale that is relevant with national spatial planning. The EBSA criteria, globally accepted criteria, are uniqueness, special importance for life history stages, importance for threatened species or habitats, vulnerability, biological diversity, and naturalness. Also, biological productivity is a criterion, but we didn't use it in the Baltic Sea. And these criteria were used to create the ecologically significant marine areas in Finland. And that was a long process where also people from Bay of Bothnia experts were involved. Altogether 87 EMMA areas were described, and we are producing a long report as we speak, and it will be published in very close future, within a couple of days possibly. If you zoom in a little bit more, you can see that this type of analysis is also relevant in regional spatial planning. These data can be used in decision making at the regional scale, for instance, in regional planning and national marine spatial planning. But then if you zoom in to a more local scale, for instance, the capital city area, you only notice that there are only the largest bays that are considered nationally significant, one of the underwater esker and sandbank areas also. But otherwise, the open sea reefs or archipelago lagoons, which may be locally important, are not seen here. And there are many in this very scattered archipelago area, where you have a lot of different bays and straits and different types of very complex systems, where you really don't know what you can find unless you go there. And yeah, many of these bays are eutrophied, but there could be different species and habitats that we are not really aware of. So the Meriluonto 2020 campaign will explore the treasures of the capital city area, but we also will focus on 2 other study areas where we have more orientation towards looking at the state of certain habitats like reefs and lagoons. But most of the effort will be focused on the capital city area. So to conclude, inventories can be done at different spatial scales for different purposes. And if we consider that the purpose of WELMU is to produce data and knowledge for conservation and sustainable use of the sea, we can close the circle by saying that Seabot is actually doing exactly this. You have been doing excellent work in covering the area in a regional spatial scale, even local scale, and even more combining Swedish and Finnish approaches to the same project. So we can repeat Minister's words by replacing WELMU with Seabot, concluding that the Seabot is also an excellent example of a research project whose results can be used in decision making. So for the part of WELMU, I really thank you for your fantastic achievements. Thank you.